Are you live? You ready? Okay. Well, welcome everyone to our 2022 Sitka Assembly Candidate Forum. I am Rachel Roy, and I am so pleased to be here and to be here in person with all of you at the Westmark Sitka. We haven't had a in-person forum or luncheon in quite some time, and it's really fun to see all of your faces and kind of nostalgic actually, because we were here in 2019, 49 weeks. We had 49 different programs, and so we are looking to bring back our program and do some in-person meetings. And as I've traveled at Southeast Conference in Ketchikan 2 weeks ago and at Alaska Chamber in Fairbanks last week, there was a lot of interest from folks to travel into town and to share their messages from across the state, and as well as local topics and all of that. So look for information about that. And I would say look for it after the Alaska Travel Industry Association's convention, because that's what we're really focused on planning for. It's happening in about a week and a half. Our numbers on Friday were 405 registered. And so that means we've got a lot of folks coming, and probably in the next week we may get up to that 450 target that they were looking at. There's opportunities for you to participate either as an attendee. I've heard some folks in the room are attending. You can also attend and volunteer as a community host, welcoming at the airport, doing various different tasks. We have an entire spreadsheet of opportunities, and we have these available for you to bring and to share with your staff. It's a really cool way that you can get to be a part of the convention and just be a part of making everyone's time in Sitka even better. When you walked in, you may have seen that the visitor guide advertising information is available. Our early bird discount is coming up on October 7th, and then we have October 21st is when any updates, the listings all get updated at this time, and anyone that wants to participate in the visitor guide, now's the time to reach out to us, and Laurie's the contact for those ads and all those goodies. We're really excited. I think we just saw our first draft of story content, and it's amazing to be at this point in the season and really planning ahead. We're looking at trends and what travelers are looking for, and looking to plan for next year. The other things that you'll see kind of in the slide deck that we're running, Halloween trick-or-treating is happening, which happens downtown. It's hosted by our Lincoln Street businesses, but we like to extend it to other businesses that aren't on Lincoln Street, either to do a pop-up or to help support those businesses. I think they buy about 1,000 pieces of candy, and so if you want to donate cash or candy, you can do that at the chamber office or online. There's a online sponsorship. And other things that are coming kind of further into the year is Light Up Lincoln Street, which is a new annual event that we started last year, where we're really encouraging all of Lincoln Street to really get their holiday decor up and ready for December 3rd. We'll do a tree lighting and caroling, and we've been getting some really great carolers confirmed. So I'm really excited about that event, and just wanted to get it kind of out there, as well as the holiday lights map, which we did over 100 addresses last year of homes and businesses that decorated. And you can grab a cup of cocoa and make it kind of a family tradition to go around and look at the Christmas lights in town. I'm encouraging everyone, we all got our dividends, so to shop local. The Silver Saver cards are still out and available. They're good through April, so it's a good time to still purchase one if you don't have one yet, but there's great savings that you can have, and really shopping local is what is going to keep our businesses going, and it keeps that money in our community rather than sending it out. I will bring you up, and then I'll explain how the candidate forum will go. Go ahead, Sarah Peterson. Thank you for coming, and she'll explain some of what you're seeing for the election.
I was just thinking how much fun it might be to have a little City Hall carol group.
Oh, I like it.
Just That's a no for me.
Everyone could hold a bell that can't sing, right?
Alrighty, so the municipal election is next Tuesday, October 4th. I have sample ballots at your tables. This year we have a two-sided ballot, so be sure when you go to the voting booth to flip over your ballot. For mayor, we have one to be elected. We have three on the ballot: Stephen Eisenbeis, Kevin Mosier, Valerie Nelson. And then for assembly, we have two to be elected. 5 candidates on the ballot: Ryan Matthew Herbert, Chris Chinelski, Tori Christensen, Chris Yestad. I'm so good at saying that your last name now. I've become a pro. Richard Janween. And then for school board, we have 3 to be elected. We have 2 candidates on the ballot: Tristan Gavon and Mitch Moore. We also have an official writing candidate for school board, Melanie Board. On the back side of the ballot, we have proposition number 1, pertaining to a marijuana tax, and with the funds being placed in an extracurricular student activities, a special fund for that, and associated travel costs. And then prop 2, using the money from the sale of the former Sitka Community Hospital site to construct a hall out at the Gary Paxton Industrial Park. We have a number of options available for voting. Our by mail ballot request, that deadline passed, that was yesterday, but folks can still vote in person, absentee at Harrigan Hall. The gals are there from 8:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday, through Monday. And then you can vote by fax. Voting by personal rep, you can have someone 18 years or older go to Harrigan Hall either during absentee or on election day, check out a ballot for you, and then bring it to you, and then you vote, and they bring it back to Harrigan Hall for you. And then of course, election day in person, the polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So, and on our website, we won't forget that, we have an election information page that you can check out. And then I also wanted to touch on a question that I've been asked a lot. What happens if there becomes a vacancy on the assembly? So our charter and code require that within 20 days that vacancy is filled. So typically what happens is there's either a special meeting to accept a resignation, or it's on a regular agenda to talk about how the assembly wants to fill that vacancy. So we've either had it in the past, we've filled it by taking letters from the public if they're interested. I advertise. They've also appointed the 3rd highest vote getter from the election. So it's really the assembly's decision on how they choose to fill those vacancies. So that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Well, great. I really just encourage everyone to have your staff go out and vote. I think that's a really important thing as an employer, is to give your staff that time to leave the building and go down there and vote. I encourage you to bring your family. I bring my littles, their whole life. I've brought them, and they get under the curtain with me, and just showing them that that process. So
Your littles comment made me remember that this year we found little future voter stickers.
Oh, I love it. Oh, that's great. So bring your family to get a future voter sticker. That's awesome. So I'll ask the candidates to come up in just a moment, but I just want to talk through, we are live on Facebook, so if you could silence your cell phones, that would be great. We are also going to be on our local television. Thank you, Dan and team, for being here. Our moderator today is Paul Kraft. He is our board vice president and president-elect, and he is also the campus director at the University of Alaska Southeast Sitka campus. We will hold a blind draw here in just a second as soon as everyone sits down to determine the order of the questions, and then it will the questions will rotate through as people are seated, with each candidate being asked the question ahead of in the order which they are seated. I don't know if I said that There are some question papers on little cards on your table. If you have any questions, I will be collecting those and we'll give them to Paul as time allows in the later part of the forum. And you do have a copy of the questions on your table if you have any, if you're wondering what will be asked. We do have a timekeeper, which is Sandy, thank you. You want to show us when the question has 30 seconds remaining. The candidates will see this sign, and when your time is up, you'll see her hold up that red sign. Thank you for doing that for us, Sandy. So let's go ahead and get you guys up here. Yeah, anywhere you want to sit. And we do also have several folks on Zoom. If you have any questions you'd like us to relay, please type those in the Q&A and we will write them down and have them looped in with the questions we've received.
All right, I have in my hand 5 cards. One of them has the number 1 on them. Whoever draws that will go first for the first question. And then the question 2, the person to your left will go first. So we'll just kind of move through. So everybody gets a chance, but this is just for a blind draw to see who goes first. I'll just start down here. Pick a card, any card. The stakes aren't very high. It's up in the upper corner. I drew it small. Is there number 1 there?
Can I give it to you?
Are you one?
He's one. This is like the Matrix. He's the one.
Okay. All right. So each of you have access to the questions. Those of you that are here in person, there are, as mentioned, people joining us online. My role is essentially to read the questions and to ensure that that everybody's given the equal amount of time to answer the questions and then move it forward. So I would ask you to pay attention to the timer, because if you end up talking longer, what's happening is you're cutting into the person that's going to follow you. Now, I'm rearranging my cards up here so that I can, so it reflects the order in which we're going to start. First of all, just on behalf of the city and borough of Sitka, I want to say thank you for your commitment to the city and your willingness to serve in very important capacities. A lot of people that stand on the sidelines and criticize leaders. There are far fewer that step up and actually take on that role. So I just want to pass on my words of gratitude for you for stepping up in this role. All right, well, we're going to get started. And Ryan, Mr. Herbert, you're going to go first. The first question, it says opening statement, but it's essentially, if you read it, it's really 3 questions in one. I'll read it. The first part of the question is, who are you? The second one is, why do you think you are qualified to serve on the City and Borough of Sitka Assembly? And the third question is, what separates you from your opponents that makes you the best candidate for Assembly? Mr. Herbert.
Do I step up there?
No, you can remain seated, and good question, we should have covered that, but you can just stay where you are.
I mean, you got the only
make your
microphone.
statement. All right.
All right.
Start the clock now.
Hi, I'm Ryan Matthew Herbert, born of James Arthur Herbert. Your guys' boiler technician in this town, has been for 30 years. And my mother, who's run your guys' hospital for the past 20 years. And and taking care of all of you. It has taught me great lessons in life about taking care of people.
I cannot hear you, I'm sorry.
My mother is Chris Crosser, the hospital. My dad is James Herbert. You guys probably know them well because they give you heat and they help you pay your bills at the hospital. I have worked most of the businesses in town, including the theaters, restaurants, bars, Stereo North, Dugout, and numerous others, including construction companies, metalwork companies. I left when I was 20 because the education level here was not sufficient for what I wanted to learn. And being a child of both California and Alaska, I discovered the balance between the two was completely off. My high school in Simi Valley High School was a college level high school. I had 7 hours of homework, 5 programs after school. And what I've discovered in this town, even on an 8th grade level, is they're only required to do 4 assignments every week at home. And their school is not challenging at all, which means it's not producing the people we need for the job market we need to cover. So that's why I think I'm sufficient for this, is because I understand the greater intelligence and the intelligence we don't have here yet. So I'm trying to build the education up in this town with infrastructure, because infrastructure will always follow education. So instead of paying for a haul out and paying for an airport, I think we should focus on universities. We should focus on education programs. We should focus on the high school and the junior highs and supply the workers that we need to build the infrastructure. Because I guarantee you, everything that we will build here will be built by somebody not from here. So we're not even paying our own kids to live here anymore. We're paying people from Alabama. Well, sorry.
Okay, fine. Ms. Chanowski, same question. Who are you and what do you think, or why do you think you're qualified to serve on the assembly, and what separates you from your opponents?
Hi, I'm Chris Hanalski. I've been here 16 years, and a lot of people know me as Grandma Tilly's Bakery, and my husband has Hanalski Home Repair and Maintenance. That's how most people know us in this town. We have 2 adult children that live here, and now I have a grandchild, and I have a lot of interest in seeing this town thrive. I have a lot of interest in seeing my children thrive and do better than they're doing right now. I feel like I'm qualified for an assembly seat because I'm a citizen of Sitka and I have invested heavily into this community. I have extensive business knowledge. I'm not afraid of hard work and I'm able to make hard decisions. I'm accountable, I have integrity, and I believe in the power of listening to all of the people that live here, not just the people I agree with. If you're seeking a politician for this seat, I will probably disappoint you. I have not perfected the art of saying what people want to hear. I see problems that need fixing and I come up with the solutions, and that's who I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Tor, same question?
Yeah, my name's Tori Christensen, for those of you who don't know. I was born and raised here, so I've been here about 58 years. And I just am finishing up my 4th term on the assembly over the last 20 years. And, you know, that's part of what separates me, is that there's definitely a learning curve on the assembly. And, you know, I don't think there's a whole lot of disagreement between a lot of the things we want to get done, but there's a big space between that and the ability to actually get things done. And that's where some experience on the assembly helps. You learn the ways to get in there and do the work and get things through, realize that the end result may not look exactly like you hoped it would be, but you have to be willing to compromise and figure out what your core goals are and get them through. And there's a lot of things I would like to get done in the next few years. I'd like to see us, we're going to talk more about that, but like opening up more land, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make that happen. And I think that I have the relationships to do that, and also that I think that I've been effective on the assembly trying to make things better where you can. Understand, you know, the old Serenity prayer, realize what the problems are, and better yet realize what you can actually change. So I'm looking forward to the next few years, and I think we have a lot of opportunities coming. We also have a lot of challenges, and I'm willing to work on them.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Yusted.
Hi, my name's Chris Yustad. I've been living in Sitka for the past 16 years. I'm originally from Astoria, Oregon, a small coastal community much like Sitka. I'm married to Lisa Blankenship. She's a lifelong Sitkan, along with most of her family. Father of 2 young, rambunctious little boys. I'm a commercial fisherman. I have a seiner, and I've owned this seiner in my own business for the past 6 years. Why I think I'm qualified for the assembly is I am not new to public service. I've been on Port and Harbors for the past 5 years. I've been on the GPIT board, Gary Paxton Industrial Park board, for the past 3 years. I'm also on multiple fishing organization boards, INSRA, DIPAC, which is another hatchery organization up in Juneau, and the Southeast Alaska Seiners Association. So all of that board experience is going to help me being able to be an effective assembly member soon as, if elected, soon as I'm seated. I'm a commercial fishing business owner. I've known that I've wanted to own my own business since high school. Didn't exactly know what that business was going to be, but I started instantly training for that. I've did multiple accounting courses in high school, Future Business Leaders of Tomorrow Club, and took a CPA program at my college. So I know my way around budgets. I know my way around balance sheets. And let's see, I also have a very good grasp of micro and macro economics, which I think is something really important at the assembly level. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Ween, if you could wrap us up for question number 1.
My name is Richard Ween, and it's almost like looking at an old home week. I'd like to give a shout out to former Mayor Paxton and his wife Deb, venerated elder Pat Alexander, and former administrator Keith Brady, and all the other hundreds of people out there. So a big shout out to you as well. I'm a 20-year resident of Sitka. I intend to spend the rest of my life here. I'm a physician and surgeon of more than 40 years experience who is currently chairman of the Alaska State Medical Board. I have spent my life taking complex problems, synthesizing the information, and developing solutions that were both practical and life-saving. But as with any problem, sometimes one needs more than one solution, and I've always had a plan B, and sometimes C and D. My qualifications include being in leadership roles in large organizations and departments with enormous responsibilities. I have also served on the Sitka Assembly for 3 years, and then consistently as a persons to be heard. That is what distinguishes me from other candidates, in that I have never been indifferent to public policy. I've attended virtually all assembly meetings over the last 2 years after my assembly term, weighing in on community issues with solution-based approach. My opinions are well known and a matter of public record. And therefore, what distinguishes me, one of the things that happens, if the future is a guide to the past, is that if you don't get seated, you disappear into the woodwork. The key here is to be engaged, to have the commitment, and I have shown that at every single meeting. I have great knowledge as to the historical, institutional items that this city faces, and I have an institutional memory, and next year I will be the memory of Sitka.
All right, thank you. The next question, and Ms. Shanowski, you'll be first up, but I'll read the question. This has to do with economic development and the support for that. Excuse me. The question is, public investments and infrastructure are needed to encourage industry growth and encourage private sector investment. If elected, how will you support economic development projects such as a marine haul out and healthcare expansion?
I will put my full support behind economic development projects that are fiscally sound and benefit the community as a whole. I think that way because I refer to the packet for city council members and highlighted here. The city council is entrusted with upholding the public interest, and it must make decisions that affect the entire community rather than any particular group. Responsibility rests with the council to decide on matters to achieve the greatest good for the greatest number of people within the community. The public interest is different from special interest. A special interest exists when one person or a group of people would benefit from a council action without regard for the larger interests of the community. Essentially, the public interest represents the maximum amount of benefit that flows to society at large rather than to select groups or individuals. With each decision, the council must weigh and uphold the public interest. That is my answer to that question. How would I encourage it? That I would follow exactly what is relegated to the council members to do in this, and for every structure, everything that it would come across the table, this is how I would look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. Tor, same question. How would you support economic development such as projects such as a marine haul out and healthcare operations?
Well, first I'll talk about the haul out specifically. That is something that I've been very involved with. I was one of the driving forces for getting it going, for this getting us on the ballot. We've been trying to get a haul out built out there ever since we took the park. And this honestly is the first thing that I think from the get-go has a real chance of working. I think it's important to understand when you're looking at things like this that it's messy. That you're never gonna have all of the information, ever. And you just have to, at some point, say, okay, we're gonna go and we're gonna deal with issues as they come up. And that's something that I think I have the flexibility and the kind of drive to say, okay, we have to push this through, we have to overcome obstacles, and they will come up as we go through things. And understand that it just takes lots of meetings and lots of trying to get consensus and getting people together to keep everybody pointing at least somewhat in the right direction so that we can actually start doing things. And this has been true of anything that we've done to try and improve economic development. I mean, honestly, some are less concrete than others, where, for instance, we have to have good schools and support our schools because that's what people look for when they look for in a community. And we can't have economic development without that. There's times when the city can stay out of the way of economic development, and that sometimes is as important as doing anything. Finally, on the hospital expansion, I think the city needs to be working with them to help get their ducks in a row for all the different parts of that project, but also to make sure that it doesn't negatively affect other parts of Sitka. So it basically comes down to just willing to do the work.
Very good. Mr. Yiston.
So how do I plan to support economic development? Well, specifically towards the haul out, no matter the outcome of Prop 2, I'm going to continue to push for a quality haul out. Whether that be we look for other funding means or another avenue of getting there, or if this does pass, I'm going to try to make sure that we get the haul out that we need and that will serve the fleet. I want to help establish a yard plan. It's not just the act of pulling the boats, but setting the support plan out there. One thing that is really exciting me is I've been contacted by multiple existing businesses, but also potential future businesses who are wanting to invest out there and open up shop, and that really excites me. I think that just shows that there will be good economic development out there if this haul out is established. I believe this haul out is an important piece of infrastructure, just like our harbor system. It is a service that I think the city needs to provide, that will see economic benefit throughout the entire city. There's multiple businesses, not just a fishing business, but tradesmen, hardware stores, grocery stores, I think eventually restaurants, hotels, as we start pulling other fishing vessels from around. I think the best way to help the hospital right now is opening up land. There's a massive housing need as this hospital grows and just our community grows in general, is we need to open up land for development, more housing. I think we could address some of our affordable housing in that by establishing smaller, denser lots to promote smaller housing and potentially prefabbed homes.
Thank you, Dr. Weems. Share your thoughts on supporting economic development projects such as a marine haul out and healthcare expansion.
Well, there are a couple of things. One is that the basic needs of a city and the only thing that the Assembly should be considered with are the big three. Education, which is nicely taken care of, at least at the moment, due to funding to the cap. Then there is public safety, which I think has been pretty much handled under the current administration. But the thing that has been lacking completely and totally has been attention to infrastructure. I think, again, as I've mentioned in the past, that we need to have context to infrastructure and deferred maintenance. We really need to know what the costs are, and everyone in Sitka needs to be reminded of the enormous amount of cost it is for the city, and therefore we need to then triage things realistically. Right now at the Assembly table, it's, well, let's do this, let's do that, all without context. And it's just not good. We need to understand what we can do, what we need to do, and what is truly forget about it. And we are not doing that. The bottom line is, for the marine haul out, we need the haul out. However, the important thing is, I believe, is in how we pay for it. Last evening at the Assembly table, we put $5 million in the infrastructure sinking fund. The important thing is that these are undesignated general fund monies which total over $14 million. So the truth of the matter is, you didn't really have to look very far for these monies for the haul out, and we really don't have to raid the permanent fund. It was actually there. And my belief is, you take the $3 or $4 million from those monies, the infrastructure, and get private buy-in, because that's the way it'll work. If you leave it to the city, we're going to bankrupt it per se, because it'll be a big hole. If you finish my sentence, if you have public buy-in, there may be more pressure to be upfront, honest, and make it a success. The healthcare is another issue.
Thank you. Mr. Herbert, same question?
Can I have a minute after that? That was kind of intense, but I like it. So like Wayne said, there's three aspects. There always has been, always will be. As I discovered being in Simi Valley High School, going to one of the most prominent college-level high schools in my life, that saved my education from having to be here. Education is paramount. Nothing gets done without education. Nothing gets done without the building class, without the people that build what we want to build. The majority of our money should be spent on education to build the builders that will build the haul out, that will build the infrastructure, build the private industry, to build this. If we don't have kids doing anything over $16 an hour, they're not building anything. They're barely scraping by. But if I can take a kid in 4 years in high school, pump him through a bunch of different certification programs while he's going to high school, so he can change his parameters, figure out what he really wants to do, I can have him making 85 to 125 by the time he leaves high school. The moment he leaves, taken in by a company, running his own company, building the haul out, making probably $125,000 a year. Now he's buying houses. Now he's fixing everybody else's houses. Now we have the money. That's one kid. And one kid in 2 months working for Cedia.net, working for a company I used to work for, AVISPL. I used to make $125,000 a year. 2 months worth of work. Working on the museum in Dubai, or working on Cisco integrated systems. That education cost me $2,000. $500 per certification, $10 an hour raise. If we don't start implementing the higher education in this town, like Zero to Dangerous, I've got CDA.net, got Star Diamond University. All these universities are actual companies that do the work. They pay for the kids, $10,000, get the education, start their career. Bam, pay for them to be a builder. You got Dean King University, Todd Sudak, same thing. If we don't build the builders of the future, we will have no infrastructure built by them.
All right, thank you. Tori, you're going to be starting us off for our workforce housing question. This has been mentioned a bit in some of the earlier comments. But the question for workforce housing is, as Sitka struggles with an inadequate amount of workforce housing, what do you see the role of the assembly? What do you see the role of assembly in solving this?
Yeah, so first of all, I don't think Sitka's far from unique in this problem. But I think that here in Sitka, the problems that are more relevant to us is, of course, the shortage of land. And recently I've been working with some members of the Planning and Zoning Commission to try and work on ways to open the land. We've always known we want to open up more of the city land and maybe the University of Alaska land. But we need to look at the model that we've been using to open up land. We've been forcing private developers to do all of the infrastructure. And I think sometimes we've tried to do it ourselves, but I think we need to look at the fact that we've got partners out there in the state and people like USDA at the feds to realize that we can't just ask, we wouldn't do ourselves any good if we just asked the developers to develop all the infrastructure, because then we're only going to have houses that start on $500,000 lots. So we need to put a lot of work in, honestly, to go out there, start with some basic layouts, and then going after state and federal money to help with the actual putting in the infrastructure. And then, which leads me to the next one, which is kind of working around the edges, and Chris kind of stole my thunder on this one earlier. Looking at zoning laws, smaller lots, more condensed, and when we open up land, especially if we have control, we can do things like say, no, we're not going to have 15,000 foot lots, we're going to have 7,000 foot lots and a bunch of them, and things like that. And then finally doing things like promoting ADUs, promoting other kind of non-traditional housing aspects and being open to them. So I think I came in under.
Thank you, Tor. Mr. Eusted, same question. What's the role of the assembly in solving our workforce housing issues?
It's kind of going back, well, exactly what Tor was saying, but also back to what I was saying is getting, yeah, no, opening up more land. I personally believe private sector can do things cheaper, more efficiently, but I'm not against looking into finding funding to help lay in the infrastructure. But I think it will be extremely important for us to establish the zoning codes and setting all these plots beforehand before we put it out to bid, so that we get the kind of housing that we're looking for. I think we do need to focus a lot of this towards the smaller lots, multiple family dwellings, in order to get a more affordable aspect of it, but also throwing in the standard single family home lots that we have now, because there is a demand for that. I believe the free marketplace will help fill our workforce housing issues. I think a lot of people will develop or build apartments or multiple family homes, condos, or maybe not condos, but duplexes and those sorts of things. And then something interesting that I came across the other day that Homer's doing to address their workforce housing issues is they, what's it called? It's called the Homer Alaska Workforce Campus. And it's kind of a bunkhouse style system that they're using. It's not very fancy by any means, but it is a bunkhouse that I couldn't find enough info on it, but it might be something that the city owns and operates. And it's a bunkhouse that they put out there for rent for potential workforce coming in. I'm not convinced that it's the right avenue, but I think it's something interesting to look further into.
Dr. Wing, same question, solving the workforce housing issues and the role of the assembly and making that happen.
Well, the question is, what is the definition of is? And that is, workforce housing has a specific implication. And that is, are we talking workhouse for people who are coming to drive buses for Alaska Coach, or work in the processors? Or are we really talking about workforce housing in people who are going to be permanent residents? And I think those are really two different questions. If it's workforce housing, then as you know, Alaska Coach built bunkhouses. Silver Bay built bunkhouses. And to me, the role of the assembly in this is to, I'll say, promote this type of behavior, but it is not their job. It is the individuals who, corporations, that need to deal with their own workhouse things. As far as I have an idea for workforce housing, and that is to have the city facilitate developing a co-op of smaller enterprises who really can't afford to build these big bunkhouses, but make a co-op where they would pool resources to build these type of temporary housings per se. The other aspect of housing, well, that really is the zoning aspect by increasing things, but I think you really have to define a lot of these issues and exactly what you mean. Words are important, and you have to have the definitions. So workhouse housing, let's have a co-op, have the city be the mediator, get it done. Individual housing, clearly that has to do with zoning, planning, and the bottom line is housing starts. Single housing starts are down in this country. Multiple housing starts have increased. So, and when you look at Sitka Land Trust, it's single housing. We need multiple housing. Those new areas need to be multiple housing. Thank you.
Mr. Herbert.
Really set me up there. Thought about this one for a long time. I don't think anybody in this town can ever design anything here properly, because we haven't designed anything properly for years, which means we don't have anybody with the education. So reaching for outside sources from like the mayor that built downtown San Diego would be a better possibility, because he changed a drugged out property of the entire downtown district and turned it to one of the most prominent places to live on this United States. So he'd probably be better at it than all of us. But to say that, progressive housing is what you want. You want a parking structure so everybody has dry area to work on their cars, boats, storage. Above that is studios, above that is single bedroom, above that is double. Now you have progressive living. As you pay off the condo of the studio, you afford the down payment on the condo of the single bedroom. As you pay off the single bedroom, you afford the double bedroom. Now you get to get a house with a condo that's double bedroom on the top floor. That's progressive housing. That's what we need. But for the people that come to this town for Alaska Coach, I think Mount Edgecombe Dorms would be a great place to put them. They can have basketball teams, they can have a free cafeteria, there's meeting rooms, everything's set up already for them. You can put everybody that visits this town that works here temporarily for the season in that place, and they'd make money. A school, like a summer school, would make tons of money off of them staying there. There's 4 beds per room, $150 a bed. That's $600 per room. It's already set up like a dormitory. It's perfect. It's actually set up like an education facility, so they can have meetings. But that would get them out of our housing and supply more housing for our youth instantly. And if you want to create more housing, why don't you go offer some investment deals to people that already have apartment complexes and take the roof off, put another level, exact diagram, gets built up, $250,000, you got 6 more apartments.
Okay. And finally, Ms. Sanowski, your thoughts on this topic?
I agree it should be private sector. We have fantastic contractors in this town, very knowledgeable people. And my husband and I just completed a project down on Catlean Street. We found a tiny home that was to be demolished. It was going to the dump. And we completely remodeled it and bought a small lot down on Catlean Street. It's 1,500 square foot lot, and we put a 350 square foot tiny home on it. And it's got a full kitchen and a full living room and a full bedroom. And my idea is that if some of the bigger lots in this town were made smaller and small houses like that put on there, that would increase multiple fold the housing in this town. There's plenty of places that that would work here. There's places where there's a lot of land and there's one house sitting on a lot of that land. And the Assembly's role in this is to make adjustments to the lot sizes and the zoning, and sometimes that can be very difficult to get through. And if that process was simplified for the contractors and citizens would come forward that would be happy to live in a house that size, because a lot of apartments in this town are that size. And that's my idea. That's just a small, that's a small thing, but I have a feeling that if it took off, we're going to have an open house on that house down on Catlean Street. You'll see it advertised, and come down and look at it and see what you think. Could you live like that? Do you think that's a good idea? And extrapolate that out over the island. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final topic that's been identified is dealing with the visitor industry. And Mr. Yested, you will begin our topic here. Let me read the question. As one of Sitka's top industries, what is your viewpoint on the growth of the visitor industry in Sitka, and how should we move forward as a community to discuss and plan for the future?
Well, I think the one thing that this year's really proven is that the tourists are back, which is really great, and then has its drawbacks at times. But I do believe in a free marketplace in capitalism, and the government should have more of a hands-off approach. Now, when I do think that government, the Assembly, should get involved is when we start seeing it affect our hospitals and other emergency services, and are they compromised and can't actually maintain or service our own citizens. Are we there yet? I'm not convinced in that. But what excites me about this year is I saw multiple new businesses opening up, taking advantage of the increased tourism. I think that that's only going to grow. I think that we're going to see a lot more new businesses open up. This year proved that they're back, and I think people are going to, we have entrepreneurs here, and they're going to open up new businesses, start new ventures, and I think it'll help spread the tourists out from downtown specifically and take the pressure off of downtown. The one thing I think we can do as an Assembly is to continue to make things go smoother. Obviously the Lincoln Street light was a problem. Turning left to try to head towards Crescent Harbor parking lot, because that's what I do all the time, that's where my boat's moored. That was a problem, and it was a problem that I think that we can definitely work towards. I know we are currently working towards, and I think that that's something that we can do. I think we need to continue to look at the street closure and see how that worked, ask everyone downtown how that worked and how the public feels, and I think we need a lot of public input on this because there is a lot of complaints. So October 27th, short-term planning meeting. There, plug it.
Dr. Wing, basically two questions. What's your viewpoint, and how do we move forward as an Assembly? Or as a community? Sorry.
Well, Basically, I do read widely, and over-tourism is a major issue throughout the world. There are any number of world-class cities like Venice and Rome and etc. who have just had enough, and they're looking to control it. As a matter of fact, the cruise line industry is getting out ahead of this problem by developing MOUs for with cities without being asked for, so they can help control some of the damage. I believe sometimes that less is more. I think that Sitka has so many allures and so many wonderful things, but you cannot, in a remote and environmentally sensitive area, allow for undivided and uncontrolled growth. We need to consider about what Sitka is and where we are going. I can tell you one thing, that through my due diligence, I see big money coming in through all over, purchasing lots and lots of things, and big money is taking over. I appreciate the cruise industry, but they need to be a partner and not the owner. I have seen multiple land transactions which have gone through, which is promoting seasonalization. The bottom line here is that when I say sometimes less is more, we really need to cap some of this growth and consider a very balanced community. And that is something we are not doing. We are getting skagwayed. And even though they had a landslide and it's giving us more, we really need to consider that. I can tell you we need to promote more longer-term tourism, and I think that they get to know the town, they get to know the culture, and they get to do lots of things. So to me, the important thing is let's take the long view and not the short, easy money, and help respect the land and its people. And that becomes more alluring and lovely.
All right, Mr. Herbert?
I'm kind of on the path with Wayne. Less is more. So, I mean, you go to Disneyland and people pay to go. They pay a lot of money to go there and spend time with their family. And I feel like what we do is we're kind of like that, but we're more special. But then we let all these free people in, and they take up all the rides and all this stuff. And all the people that actually waited and took their families and paid for the hotels, and paid for the actual events, and they paid to be there, don't get to use it now because there's 6,000 people in front of them that got there for free, that never earned it, didn't pay for it, didn't do anything. So that's the cruise ships. I really prefer that they get charged to come here just like everybody else. If you're not coming here for $1,400 for the week or $2,000, then you're only in town for 4 days. $300 sounds nice. How about we just set up a $300 fare so everybody gets off the boat, pays $300? That's like ticket price to go to Disneyland and California. So you think about that, 1,000 people get off, that's admirable for our town. We can support 1,000 people, and that's $300,000 in our pocket for the 1,000 people that came over. That's a great start to building a boat haul out, to infrastructure, to replacing a water main that didn't even get replaced in the street that we just covered up. I mean, it's not fair. Why do they get to visit our town and not pay for anything in it? I don't like it. I want to change it. Or they could just stay on the boat. I mean, they already paid the minimal amount to come here. That's the boat. You saw the town. See you later. If you want to come visit, why don't you buy a plane ticket? Stay at one of our hotels. Go out fishing with one of our vendors. Stay a while. Think about moving here. The ones on the boat, they just spend $12 on a piece thing from China, and they are rude to everybody at the hotels and everybody at the restaurants, and they tip nothing. And they take up all the space that people that spend good money don't get to use now. I don't remember the last time I could get to a coffee shop, buy a cup of coffee from my own friends.
Ms. Janowski, same question. Your viewpoint on the growth of the visitor industry in Sitka and how we should move forward as a community to discuss and plan for the future.
Well, I love to see businesses thriving here. I'm pro-business, and I love to see it because it's one of the hardest things when you have a business is getting your customers. And here you are, you have just thousands of people pouring by your door every single day. It's wonderful. But I also I ran into a musician off of one of the cruise ships. He's from New York City, and I asked him, he said he's been coming here 30 years doing that. He comes every year on the cruise ship. And I said, well, what do you think? And he said, wow, this place has changed a lot, and not for the better. He goes, I love it here. I love this place. I talk to everybody about it. But what you guys got going on here right now is not going to end well. And I kind of feel like he does in a way. I don't have the answer because the private dock is private, and I don't know how do you stop that from happening. Do you cap a private business on the numbers of ships? I don't know. But I was standing downtown not too long ago. There was a couple ships in town. I was at Wells Fargo parking lot. I couldn't get out of the parking lot. The road is blocked with the toilets, and there were so many people I couldn't get off. I couldn't get onto the sidewalk. The buses were chugging by with black smoke pouring out, and I just thought, this is Walmart. I feel like this is Walmart when Sitka is Nordstrom. Sitka is special. It's the best place in Alaska. How do we find that balance? Right? How do we, I don't have the answer to that, but I think we probably all in agreement that's the direction we need to go. We need to find the balance. Thank you.
So,
Tori, your thoughts on the visitor industry?
yeah, I mean, so it was obviously a different year, and I think we had some things lined up this year that at least aren't going to happen in the same way where we had such a huge jump in one year. But I'm a big fan of the U.S. Constitution, so we don't really have a legal means to force a certain number of tourists, either direction. But we can mitigate. I think that the main thing is going to be continued meetings with the stakeholders, like we did with the short-term plan. We all knew the short-term plan was just that. And you know, at the beginning of this process, I think one of the things I said was the only thing I know for sure that's going to happen is it's going to change. And it will again. I think there's some things we can do. I want to start pushing, at least initially, with incentives, and maybe then pushing a little harder with some moving towards electric buses. I think that would go a long ways. First of all, the noise factor, we would be paying ourselves. They're out there. And I think that once they got a few buses under moving, using electric, they'd realize they wind up saving them a lot of money. So I think that's one way to mitigate it. It's unfortunate because the state and some controls a lot of the infrastructure we'd like to deal with. Obviously, the Lincoln intersection, but we can do this in conjunction with the cruise ship agencies, and they're listening. And the people of Sitka, as long as we are engaging with one another and working towards making it better, it will get better. But like I said, we can't legally tell a private dock not to dock boats.
Mr. Yista, same question?
You started with me.
I did.
Yeah.
You want to tell us have you changed your mind on this?
No, I mean, I could probably go
No.
for another 5 minutes, but no.
Need to pay more attention to my notes here. So I do want to draw your attention to the next part of the forum will be answering questions that have been submitted by the audience. And so you haven't had time to prepare, and you have 1 minute instead of 2 minutes to respond. So we're going to start with Dr. Ween. Here is the first question. What is your #1 priority for 2023 for Sitka? #1 priority, if you could do one thing, accomplish one thing this year, what would you hope it to be?
If I had accomplished one thing, if I ruled the world, every day would be the first day of spring. But the bottom line is, it's all about the economy. And the key here is, if I had one thing to do, it's to highlight the realities that we are really in Sitka not facing. I read about the world, I read about the country, I read about the state, and yet we sit here talking about all these wonderful things. The important thing that we need to do is highlight what we can do, what we can't do, and what we should do. And
a lot of parents got lost in the 5 years between the drug wars and stuff and the prescription drug wars. So there's a lot of kids out there that don't even have parents. Like 65% of my graduating class, you know, a lot of them had troubles. All their kids are lost. I've had to raise 62 kids just on my own, just with education I've learned over time and traveling. I didn't want to move back to Alaska. I really liked my job down south, making tons of money, visiting my family, but I always promised everybody here I'd move back and fix this place once I actually understood how to fix it. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to fix the problems that you guys all left me behind, because I am the future and the kids are the future behind me. So I'm learning from the oldest and the wisest to do the best I can for the young that are going to take over for me in the future. So education is paramount. It's the keystone to everything.
Ms. Smolsky, what's your number one priority for 2023?
I would like to see the community come back together. After the last 2.5 years of hell, I would really like to see people get along again and be neighborly and be friendly and actually talk to each other and discuss things without cancel culture, where you can have an opinion without being shut down. This is a wonderful place to live, and I mean, look around, look at the environment, and look at the caliber of people that live here. Let's just get along again, okay?
Tor?
Besides the everyday work of the assembly, which is going to take up a lot of whoever's elected time, personally, I think my main focus, because the haul-out's going to pass, is going to be on opening land, on working on ways that don't take any kind of political or ideological stance, just purely focus on what works. How, I don't care how it gets built necessarily, who builds it, as far as things like the utilities and things, but we need to open up land. I think that's the only way we can truly take big swings at our housing costs. Like I said, and continue to work on the bunts, so to speak, but I think if we can get some of our larger pieces of land open for development and do it in a way that works, I think that's going to probably have the biggest single impact on people in Sitka, beyond everything else we do every day on the assembly.
Very good. Mr. Eusted?
So as I thought about this question, I was bouncing back and forth between opening up land and the haul out. I think the opening up land is a slightly more longer term goal. The haul out, I think, is more instant. We have an opportunity here to get a good quality yard established here, and it's going to keep millions in this community. It's going to be a huge economic factor, and I want to see that this money stays. We're just now starting to see the money leave this community, and I don't want to see that. I want to see that we are able to support our local economy, and we hear it over and over, shop local, and I think having a yard will facilitate that. It'll keep our fishermen and other marine companies spending our money here within this community. So I think that's my number one priority.
The next question, and Mr. Herbert, you will be the first to answer this. This is from the audience. Will you support a sinking fund to repair and maintain existing city buildings and programs?
April Fool's Day next year, I open my property management company. I have a meeting with insurers over there after this to talk about insuring kids from schools, so I can hire them first through multiple education platforms, probably about 16 universities underneath the co-op development that I'm going to create, called Peter Parker Property Management Co-op. It's basically keeping people in their businesses as well as working underneath one roof, but it's taking care of all places here. I've been doing it for 9 years in Juneau, just so I could do it here when I got home. So what I do is I maintain the beauty of buildings while doing 10-point inspections for free to make sure that $100 problems don't turn into $10,000 problems. And then like newspaper routes, I'm going to separate the work by kids that live in the same area. So they will continue to maintain the houses around them and learn how to enjoy and connect with their communities again. In the process, I'll be building their business and their education level indefinitely.
Ms. Shanowski, will you support a sinking fund to repair and maintain existing city buildings and programs?
I don't know what a sinking fund is. Can anybody define it?
I don't have an answer to
It's
that.
it's a specialized fund that has rules and specific purposes and uses. So like our infrastructure fund is limited by utilizing just for infrastructure. The question last night at the assembly, well, can we give it for utilities?
Excuse
and
me,
stuff?
you will get your chance.
It's more money they want to spend for things so we can teach kids how to do.
Thank you, Mr. Christensen.
Put money away for deferred maintenance.
But
That seems common sense. That seems like a smart thing to do, so I guess that's my answer.
Yeah, exactly, we have one. That was my answer. We put $5 million in it last night. And we do, right now, if there's any surplus,
Yeah.
sorry, I thought you were done. You said you were done.
Yeah,
No,
I'm sorry,
I
I
thought
thought
when
you
you
said you
said
were done.
that was your answer.
Okay.
I assumed
Yeah.
you were, if you have more time.
I think
no,
we-
that's okay. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I thought when you said that's my answer, it's like,
Okay.
so anyway, we have one. We put any surplus every year into it. We've, haven't had great success getting a lot of money into it lately, but it was very nice to see $5 million going into it last night. And I'm hopeful with a lot of the things we've been talking about that we will continue to. I think it needs to be a high priority on the assembly to continue to funnel money into that fund, which we have and have had for quite a while now. Thank you.
Mr.
And
Husted?
I'm done.
Well, I guess since we already have that fund established, yeah, of course. In my business, maintenance is huge. I got a 1953 wood boat, so maintenance is paramount. And I don't call it a sinking fund, but that is basically what I have within my own business. So it is something that I support extremely. I think with the increased revenue that we're seeing this year through our tourism, I think we're going to be able to put more into the sinking fund. So, yeah, I'm optimistic about it.
Dr. Wayne, your thoughts?
Well, I have a 1950 body, and that requires a lot of maintenance and sometimes repair. The important thing to know is that it's about the economy, and what you can put into these funds is based upon what your earnings are and how you are able to shepherd those funds into these various aspects. As was mentioned by the esteemed former mayor, was that this is deferred maintenance. We have an enormous amount of money that is required for our deferred maintenance, and that's why I keep saying it's the context. Everybody talks about these things. These are these little phrases, but the bottom line is when you have $200 million in deferred maintenance, that's the context, and that becomes very, very real. Here we got $5 million from various things which may not be there next year depending on the economy. Anybody hear what happened to Norse, the pipeline? The world changes. The world can change in a flash.
All right, the next question probably doesn't take a minute to answer. But Ms. Shanowski, you'll be the first to do so. It says, the candidate handbook requires candidates to continuously reside in Sitka for 12 months preceding the election. Do you meet this requirement?
Me first?
Yep.
I don't go anywhere. Yeah. I take that back. I'm leaving in 2 weeks to go to a wedding that we've had planned for 2 years.
I think that's allowed. Tor?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a permanent resident here.
Yeah.
Dr. Ween?
I am permanently in residence here.
And Mr. Herbert?
This is a common debate that comes up in a lot of government topics, and I've always wanted to touch base on it because of unique situations. So I've had the same address for 20 years. I've had the same phone number for 20 years, Sitka prefix, so you could say I've lived here. I've actually been here 31 years of my life. But Alaska is not where I stay in the wintertime because there's no education, there's no development, there's no learning, there's no $125 an hour that I make or $225 an hour I make traveling the world building what soon might be, my buddy might get the contract for NASA, which I'd really love to do that job. So why would I want to stay here when I can do a Zoom inside the NASA tower while I do the audio visual and teach kids how far their growth can go? Hey, this is where I am. This is where you could be tomorrow. So it's like, why would I want to stay here? We're in 2022. I'm not in 1995.
All right, the final question, I believe it's because we're getting close to the 1:30 hour, and we want to give people a chance to do a 1-minute closing statement.
Put my ticket price.
So, Tor, I believe I'm to you. The final question is, candidates seem to have a number of pre-existing commitments. What will be your availability to commit the time needed to meet Sitka's long-term goals?
Well, I think that I have shown that I missed very few meetings. I live here, I've worked my schedule around as such that I can be here and respond, both go to the meetings and go to the extra meetings and have long conversations with people about the issues. And I've been known to spend a fair amount of time down at City Hall talking to people, trying to lay the groundwork for things. So I don't see, while I may be running hard, running my girls around, I have not had much of an issue meeting the commitments of the position, and I don't expect to see them in the future. I just may have to run a little faster.
Thank you. Again, the question, what's your availability with your pre-existing commitments? What's your availability to commit the time needed to meet Sitka's long-term goals?
Well, obviously as a fisherman, I'm very seasonal. Wintertime, I have an extreme amount of time to be able to dedicate. During season, obviously my time is precious, but I will be able to dedicate a lot of time. A lot of my time is spent on anchor, so I'll be able to do all the research and reading necessary to be a good active assembly member. I also just got Starlink for my boat, so I will be able to Zoom even from the cod edge. So I'll be able to be a part of all the meetings no matter where I'm at. I do plan on trying to be at all the meetings. The nice thing about a Tuesday meeting, that is one of my very few free days during the summer, so I will be able to attend in person. I think maybe I might miss one during the summer, even though I'm going to have a very busy schedule. But I will be able to put lots of time in and dedicate towards this.
All right, Dr. Wing?
Well, in ancient Rome, the Senate was populated by venerated elders. As a matter of fact, senator comes from the word senex, which is Latin for me, older, mature, and somebody who has the time to dedicate to this process. I am no longer performing surgery. I have the time, I have the beer, and it's like Miller High Life. Bottom line is, I do have the time. I've demonstrated my commitment, and I will serve, to the fullest. So, Senatus Populusque Romanus. Acta non verba. Action, not words.
Mr. Herbert?
It's a tough one to follow as always. Mr. Wing, thank you. I'm always about higher education. So every morning I get up at 4:30, do my coffee, 5 to 7. I do all my general tasks, making my bed, laundry, everything. Same day, every day of the week. 7 to 9 I do my education. I go online, I call phones, I educate myself wildly. 9 till about 6 at work. And then 6 would probably be there. But to be a part of the meetings all the time and sacrifice a child's education or workload where I'm doing and I'm building a house for somebody for free because he can't afford it. So I use the profits of 4 other people that could afford it to build the 5th one. I'm not exactly going to run away from the job super fast, but I'm put an elderly order. But I will make it to every meeting that's on my schedule. But sometimes it's going to be Zoom because I'm going to be busy helping a child or an older person or somebody.
Well, since you didn't ask my question, I will. What are you going to do to ensure that search is accountable for maintaining Sitka high quality of life in a small town atmosphere? Listen, we got 30 or 40% of our population who are not in the affluent, upscale deal, who love this town, and they need to be cared for and respected. Don't need to answer, but you damn well better do it.
Well, there's an actual.
Let's finish this question. If we have more questions here than we have time. But so if I could ask Ms. Shanowski to answer the question that's under discussion now, your availability.
I have the time now. I've wanted to do this for a while, but I was working full-time. And we closed Gramatilli's Bakery, the business itself, and rented out the building to a new business. And I moved into a small dedicated kitchen. So I still do take custom orders, but they're very few and far between. So I do have the time to dedicate to this, and I'm looking forward to that. And as a side note, since Chris mentioned Starlink, we got to actually see the satellites go over. Did anybody catch that? We were out late at night and saw them go over, so that was pretty cool. Anyway, thank you.
I apologize. I thought you'd finished that question. Sorry.
That's why we love you, Gary.
I know, right?
It's not easy being sleepy.
Have you answered this question yet?
I believe so, yeah.
Well, you did?
Yep.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
it just was concise.
I guess at the risk of going a little over, we could add that question.
Yeah, please. That'd be great.
Rephrase it and repeat.
Definitely, Paxton. I would love to answer that question for you.
All right, so here, as I said, there were more questions submitted. But here's a question, and let's see, who's up? Mr.
she went
Easton, I
last.
believe.
Yeah, I think so.
For starter. How will you hold search accountable to maintain high quality of life and small town atmosphere in Sitka? Again, in the role of the Sitka assembly person, how will you hold search accountable to maintain high quality of life in the small town atmosphere in Sitka?
I guess I don't fully understand the meaning. Would you be willing to expand on that?
Sure. I mean, it would stop with your leadership, taking the leadership of search and holding them accountable for doing what I just said. It's a frame of mind. It's like we like to talk about the complexity of the economy and that, but it's got to be, you either care about that kind of stuff, you're going to deal with search, who has a big corporation, that is not their instinct.
Okay. All right. I don't know how we can do that as an assembly because they are a private corporation. I mean, I'm willing to look into anything, but I just don't know how as a government body we can help. But obviously, quality of life for all Sitkans is extremely important, and I think we need to focus on that. But yeah, I just don't know exactly what we can do at this moment.
Dr. Wing?
Funny you should ask that question. The bottom line is any hospital has a duty to care.
Yep.
And they have a duty which is actually where they are legally bound to do that. One of the things you learn in life is that you cannot win unless you have the ability to say no. And the Sitka Assembly can say no on so many issues. If you notice that that transparency in medical, for example, services is supposed to be there, but we do not see it happen. And there are many things that the Assembly can do as far as, you know, having them pay their taxes and all these other things, which can bring it. When I sat on the Assembly, the assessed value of some of their property over on Al's Island was like, would have brought in an extra $1 million, but it just kept getting pushed away. Bottom line is, we have the ability, we can obtain the knowledge, and we need to do it in this small town. Thank you.
Mr. Herbert?
Well, it broke my heart when I got back home one year because my mom, she got laid off by them. So I had to spend an entire year helping her pay for her house. And I was just one person. I can imagine how many people got laid off from that job and not paid and promised positions and all that stuff. So I've never really had a love for search. And I really miss the Sitka community, and I don't know why our town didn't make that one work. Paying for that hospital to stick around would have created a nice, what do you call it when you have Delta and Alaska Airlines, the prices drop because they become real again. But basically I think they overcharge because they have no competition, and not having a healthy competition creates problems, just like Pan Am and TWA. I think just building rules around them, not selling them every piece of land we own, you know, limiting to the percentage of land they can own here, and then making them develop it to the aspects of our dreams, not theirs.
Ms. Shanowski?
I have the same concerns, the same questions, and I am curious at an assembly level what is possible, what kind of limits can be put onto a native corporation that large. They're so big, and they're expanding into other communities as well. I have the same questions, same concerns. Thank you.
Finally, Tori?
Yeah, like I said, I don't think it does us any good to revisit the sale of the hospital. I probably wouldn't have supported that had it been on the Assembly at the time, but it's done. So we've got to deal with search. I think it's important to face reality. I think we need to maintain our lines of communication open with search. We do have ways that we can influence them. Unfortunately, the property tax issue is kind of a legal tribal issue that we don't have any nice unfunded mandate from the state and the Fed, so can't really do much about that. But we can hold them to the building codes. We can hold them to the rules that we have, and we have. But we also need to maintain communication because they're the only game in town, and they're our biggest employer. So maintaining communication, maintaining dialogue.
All right, so let's go to the closing statement, and Dr. Ween, you'll start us off. What would your service as an assembly member mean for the community?
I think it will mean that there will, after the last number of years, that there will be diversity on the assembly. And the diversity that I speak of is diversity of opinion. And that really needs to happen. Everything is based upon literally the economy. Sitka is very sensitive to outside economic forces, whether it be fossil fuels, etc., within our dependence. And the bottom line is I definitely can bring researched, hopefully intelligent opinions, and I feel that I can be a benefit. But as I told people before, I always have a plan B or C or D, and that is whether I win or lose, I'm going to be there. My commitment is complete, whether you hear from me with a pitcher of ice water at the table or with me eating popcorn. Either way, I'll be there. So thank you, and whatever happens, I am engaged.
Mr. Herbert, same question. What would your service as an assembly member mean for the community?
great change very fast, because not only do I rely on the public to do any of this work for me or help me develop this place, I've already taken the action. I've got 6 colleges I'll be visiting over the next 4 months when I'm gone for the winter about branching up to Alaska. These are colleges that are actually trades, because tradesmen don't hire anybody anymore. They make them to pay $10,000 to go to school, but there's scholarships for it. I grew up a very traumatic childhood, so I learned 3 things growing up as a kid. You catastrophize, so you always think the worst thing is going to happen. You figure out an exit strategy and plan around it, and rationalize why it happened. So it's made me very, very good at my problem-solving skills. So solving this place is pretty easy, because I've done it in a lot of places.
Ms. Sanowski, how did your service, what will your service mean for the community?
Well, I think people would have the benefit of a new point of view, fresh ideas from a business owner's perspective. I'm familiar with problem solving and I'm solution oriented. I don't have any problem making decisions, and I do believe that the larger part of the community should be listened to. And I would like to see a little more engagement on the assembly level, as far as maybe a town hall once every couple of months where the whole town could attend and have their questions answered. Back and forth conversation, not just the talking 3 minutes that can't be answered by the assembly. Thank you.
Tor?
Well, I can get things done, and I have. And, you know, one of the things you learn is, you can't, it's very easy to just say no to everything. It's a very good way, great way to be popular, because you never have to take responsibility for anything then. But I'm willing to kind of get down in the trenches and where it's messy to try and actually get things done, to try and figure out ways to get land opening up, to try and figure out ways to have our various entities cooperate with each other, to continue to work on making our city government better. It doesn't make a very good bullet point on an ad, but our city government is doing really well. It's getting much better organized. It's really, I think the morale is very good, unlike it, when I first got back in the assembly this time, it was pretty bad. So we are making real progress, and I want to make sure to keep that going. And I will continue to work to find consensus on issues and work to actually get things done.
And Mr. Houston?
So what I'll bring to the community is a hardworking blue-collar assembly member that knows the value of the dollar. I know that our tax dollars are not easily earned, and that they need to be spent wisely and without waste. I'll bring a pro-business attitude and a rather government hands-off approach. I think government needs to supply infrastructure and service and land, and let private industry in a free marketplace do the rest. As an assembly member, I want to create opportunities for young families, whether in business or in their home opportunities, by opening up land. And as an just in general, I'm heavily invested in this community as a businessman and as a family member. And it's something that I want to leave better than I found it. It's something that my kids will want to raise their families here. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm going to turn it back to Rachel, but before I do that, I think I would ask the audience to show appreciation to our candidates.
Well, and can we get a hand for our moderator? If you haven't had time to visit with Paul, I definitely recommend setting up a meeting with him over at the university. He's just been such a great member of our board, and so I sure appreciate him. The events that you've seen scrolling and all of the things that are coming up for this fall, check out our sitkachamber.com for more information about sponsoring or participating. Get out and vote on Tuesday, and then on your way out, if you came in person, you can grab a fresh baked cookie. So thank you all for being here, and I look forward to putting together more. Thank you to our candidates for participating.